Welcome to the NWR Communications Near-Term Producers Conference. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and next up we have EQ Resources. ASX code is EQR. They've got a tungsten project at Mt Carbine in Queensland, North Queensland, and most of you will know that it's tungsten, and that is a critical metal. So this is a critical time to be speaking with EQ. Joining me today is Kevin MacNeill. He is the CEO. Kevin, great to see you. Give us some updates. You've been a busy guy.
Good, Gary. Great to see you. And hello from Mt Carbine site and beautiful sunny northern Queensland. I guess just want to start with some of the value propositions that that EQ has to offer shareholders. And being Australia's only primary tungsten producer as a critical metal is certainly attracting a lot of attention through the both provincial and federal governments. Obviously, China currently produces 83% of the world's tungsten, and this worries everybody, obviously. So we're trying to accelerate as fast as we can to get into more serious production than we have been. And this leads us to the bankable feasibility study that we did this year. And also at Mt Carbine, as you may know, that we also do a quarry operation. And what we are trying to define as green aggregates, as it's all recyclable material through our XRT sorting plant, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I guess the other value proposition is on our board and leadership team, which I think we have a very experienced board, and I won't bore you by going through them, but we do have a very experienced board. So why EQ Resources? Why should you invest in EQ Resources? Like I said, we're the primary tungsten producer. We currently have the BFS finished, and we are into fundraising on the bankable feasibility study. So we defined a very simplistic project. There's a lot more to come. This is representing 14.5% of the total resource at Mt Carbine, but we did it quick, easy, simple, dropping a couple of benches into the old open pit and tackling the waste dump with XRT sorting. And we certainly see that there's a very long, that's a 12-year mine life as it is, but there's a whole underground component that is going to come in, and the expanded open pit that we feel that will come to pass in the next year or so. What have we done in the last 12 months? Basically, since one of the last times we've talked, we drilled a very high grade resource. And I think what the geological understanding doing that is that we defined that there is a level control with the tungsten at a particular depth. And having drilled that, we now are expanding that out to the west with our current drill program and targeting these particular levels that are very juicy in the deposit and are having some success. So we did the whole bankable feasibility study. We raised money for early works, providing us with getting environmental permits to mine and process 1 million tons out of the waste dump. We stabilized the gravity operations with that cash as well, and we have the plant running at 1,000 tons per day currently, and that's sufficient to run the open pit. So there's very little, there's just more enhancement as opposed to constructing. So I guess what I like to say is that we de-risked the project over the last 12 months by doing this work on both the tailings and the waste rock dump, by bulk sampling, testing, working the bugs out of it, and then redoing the processing plant. So we are producing on a monthly basis. We peaked in December with 40 tons of concentrate. We hope to push it up into April, up into the 60 to 90 ton level in May. Sorry, we're still installing some of the kit at the on the early works, which you'll see a couple of things. And then we did an underground scoping document that isn't released yet. And we did a very good job with that, I feel, or Deswick did a very good job for us. And then certainly on the quarry, we completed some very large projects on roadworks and boat ramp in particular for the government, and using recycled aggregates from Mount Carbine. So priorities coming up is just finishing the install on the early works program to get us more capacity and to bring us up higher tungsten. Financial close on the BFS funding, which was 21 million Aussie dollars. We have drilled the western section of the pit, which we put out a news release, and it looks very encouraging, so that will be assessed. We on site, I think, got all the systems in place. I know people don't appreciate that, but from a near-term producer, which this talk is about, is that we need to have the systems up and running. So we're fully staffed up now and able to jump right into the open pit and start more serious production, where the open pit brings us up into that 300 tons a month production. And then obviously we're going to promote more of our...
Kevin, sorry to interrupt you, but when you are getting up into that 300 million tons production, where's that go to? What's the economics of that?
Yeah, so each ton, when we say 300 tons, it generally sells for about 16,000 Aussie dollars per ton, and that's on a monthly basis. So 300 tons a month. And that's on a monthly basis. So in the open pit peaks with profits of up around $90 million in profits pre-tax, as you've seen from the project economics earlier. So the trick is to keep them going. It's a very short life because we're only dropping a couple of benches in. So we're trying to expand that open pit and then also get into the underground. ESG is certainly a very important part of our organization as well. We're all big believers in ESG. We certainly have all the compliance in place from the government on the environmental section. Socially, I think we're doing a very good job as well. So we did a survey from our stakeholders and defined which areas of perception are we failing in and which ones are we excelling in. So this is what this graph is all about. So I'll leave that with you. I guess the open cut and modernization of the plan. So we are located, the beauty of our project is we are located about 50 minutes from Port Douglas up the range on the tablelands, and Mariba on the other direction. So we don't have any requirement for camps. We pull all our local workforce just in the area. And we've been training a lot of people that have not been in the mining industry before. And a lot of farming people. So yeah, we have binding offtake agreements with Cronimet, our partner on the waste dump. They will take all our open pit production as well. So we have no problem selling our product when we do produce the tungsten concentrates in large quantities. These are the economics. Average of the tungsten production is 2,200 tons per annum over the life, peaking with, I think it's probably close to 4,000 it peaks at. 12-year mine life. So an MTU, you'll see $430 an MTU. So that's a 10 kgs of material. So it's basically $43,000 a ton of pure tungsten. But because we have a 50% concentrate, that goes to half of that amount when we sell it. IRR 154%, very, very serious. And the NPV on the first two benches out of the open pit and the waste dump is 131 million, and that comes to you very, very quickly within the first 3-4 years of life. So as I said, see the cash flows ramp up very, very significantly and then drop off, but it's certainly not our intention to have them drop off. We will have the underground. It's just that we don't have feasibility to justify them at this time, but both the expansion of the open pit and the underground, we certainly hope to keep that high level of cash coming. So we've done a scoping document in that regard to be able to start this work and get us over the line. Production costs on the graph on the right, you'll see where it says Mt Carbine. We're certainly in the lower quartile of the production costs for companies in tungsten. China has some of the highest cost producers and some of the lowest cost producers because they have molybdenum byproducts, but certainly we have not factored in our quarry aggregate business into these costs as well. So we're quite comfortable. We're only about, our production cost is about a quarter of the overall of cost of sales on the BFS. Payback period. Sorry.
You mentioned byproducts. Have you got any moly or any other byproducts, or?
Absolutely nothing except for aggregate. The ore is very, very clean. It's basically quartz and wolframite scheelite tungsten minerals, and works very well in the gravity plant, but no other minerals.
Okay.
So as I said, the focus right now is to start with the low-grade 12 million ton waste dump, which we've tested about 200,000 tons out of so far, and continue to expand that operation. We are required for phase 2 of the open pit. We need to get an amendment on our EA to place waste dumps, which is underway. We expect that to be the 4th quarter of next year to start the open pit. And phase 3 is certainly the underground mining operation, which we'll be talking about more and more as the year goes on. Geology, so the overall Mt Carbine, which is quite interesting. So this number of 6.693, which is made up of both indicated and inferred, but this relates to the $430 per MTU, and this is the total number of MTUs that's in the inferred and indicated totals. But you can see for yourself the indicated is 1.7 million MTUs, which is a very significant number, obviously. This is just a quick geology. The defined open pit is a very high grade for the deposit. You can see the veins that are running. We have names for each of these pretty colored veins, and our geologists are busy looking at the definitive mine plans with one of the contractors that we've shortlisted, which was Golding's. We're very advanced in that regard. So we are looking forward, but you can see the underground potential where the current existing open pit stops and the ore continues in both to the north and at depth. Recently, we did a drill program out to the western extension of the open pit. You can see the new drill holes that are put in, and those drill holes assays are pending and should be released shortly. We did say in the release that we did have some very nice intersections because we can see it under the lamp with scheelite, and then over to the west, the last hole to the west was one of our richest holes that visually we could see. Again, that's the extension, and you can see the pretty scheelite glowing there with the wolframite overprinted on the wolframite, which gives us a really nice advantage in our deposit that you have the two minerals, but there's a little bit of scheelite replacement on the wolframite, so it sticks out very well. Just a quick one, you can see a little bit of copper for the first time that we found in our deposit. That's not significant value-wise, but it is significant to the geologists to tell them which direction the temperature is coming and where to locate the next drill holes where it could be richer. So this is the 12 million ton waste dump and the open pit development, as you see through to the years. We have, like I said, taken a big slice out of the top of this dump, as well as several pits around this dump, and that's supporting the 21.2 million on a 12 million mine life. The expansion and development. So this is the program that we're looking at, and these are the things that we've already checked off. The feasibility, the gravity plant upgrade, permitting, you can see along the bottom on the permitting as we've developed. We are getting to the tail end of our financing project, waiting for a couple of pieces to close, and then we should be good to go. Early works and the crushing plant, I'll show you a couple of pictures here shortly, but we've been processing straight through for the last year on this on the program, and then we'll be into construction in earnest shortly after the financing. We are, like I said, in current operation. These are live pictures currently. We have both a jig and table set up where we do 1,000 tons a day through the jig, and that gets reduced to 10% across the tables, and we process the less. So the beauty of Mt Carbine, it did have a lot of infrastructure. The road runs directly through the mining property, power lines of every shape and size, so we are not challenged in that regard, and we're close to towns that we're able to check it out. So these are just some what we call phase one, which we're doing now. In the top diagram, we did have one of the big Sandvik screens were in stock, and we purchased it, and we're installing that in its right location so we can accelerate the production currently while we wait for the rest of the material, the crushing kit to get here. And then you can see the bottom. We have been able to get our recoveries just under 80% through the processing plant, and it's very stable. We're getting a 90% availability in our processing plant currently. These are just some pictures from the early works. We installed additional power. This is the screen that you can see from Sandvik. The guy standing next to it, it's massive. We did put in an additional XRT sorting plant. We now have 2 running. We've got a Tech Rock VSI, and we've produced all our own conveyors on site through our workshops here for the early works. And this is the final setup. So next time we talk, Carrie, you will have pictures of this setup in, I'm sure.
Real time.
Real time, yeah. These are just a couple of shots through the XRT sorters and whatever. And this is the plant. So I just a quick flip. So, you know, we have partnered with local family and indigenization on the exploration ground around the property. I think we've done a really good job integrating females into our workforce. We are now sitting something like 22% of our workforce, and they are integrated from shift leaders all the way down through the truck driving into the office. So it's really a mix of the ladies taken on, and a lot of these ladies have been trained from scratch. They didn't come in the mining industry at all.
And you know that ladies are much better at driving trucks anyway, don't you, Kevin?
They certainly are much easier on them, for sure. So, Carrie, that wraps up my presentation. Like I said, we are making very significant progress on all fronts here, and we have 65 employees now on the site.
Well, you've certainly been busy since I last spoke to you, but I've got some questions here. First one was, you know, the XRT sorting plant. Just explain a little bit more about how that integrates and why that's important.
Yeah, so out of the waste dump is a very low grade material. So out of the waste dump, when we screen it and crush it, we pass it through the ore sorters. So the fine material -6 millimeters, which is like a little chip, it goes directly to the processing plant. And the remaining material is quite low grade. That fines tends to upgrade naturally. And then the remaining material, we crush it to like 40 millimeters to 6 millimeters. And then we pass it through the ore sorter. And then the ore sorters, the X-rays take out any pieces with tungsten in it, which is generally about 10% of the rocks have a little piece of tungsten in it. So it ejects off just those rocks. So we end up putting in, for instance, we put in 100 tons into the sorter, we take 10 tons out, but it has all the tungsten with that 10 tons. It has 95% of the tungsten with that 10 tons that we take out. And that goes to the processing plant. So it's a much higher grade. And that operation runs like $1 a ton. So instead of the processing plant where you're running at $15 a ton, this runs at $1 a ton, and it's dry. And the other beauty is you end up having this beautiful aggregate that's left over that has nothing in it that you can sell for road base and crusher and concrete, all kinds of things. So we have a fully integrated quarry business on site as well.
Well, that helps offset some of the costs. Look, I've got a few funding questions here, and ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to ask a question, pop it in the Q&A box and I'll aim to get to it. The Sandvik funding package, which was 4.8 million, that's about half the required funding for the stockpile and the open pit development. So when do you see, when are you going to secure the balance of the funding required and starting sort of to commence development?
Yeah, so the total capital is about 21 million with working capital and the open pit. So that gets broken out into two stages, one for the waste dump and one for the open pit upgrade. So what we're doing is securing getting the waste dump 10 million, make sure that's secured first. And so that is well underway. I can't say a whole lot about the timing on it because it's not public just yet, but and we are waiting for various we have several term sheets in, and we're just trying to work through the best deal for the shareholders. Let's put it that way.
I like the way you keep saying for the shareholders. That's quite good. Now, earlier in the presentation, you talked about the BFS and that it was based on 14.8, call it 15%. On the open pit. Why didn't you base the BFS on the full inventory and I guess a view on the overall scale of the project?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I've been beat up several occasions on this, but I'm sticking to my guns. I like to get into production. I want to get into production quickly and fast. Yeah. And those two benches in the open pit allowed us to get the BFS done economically and get us into production. We're drilling off, and we will come out with an announcement depending on what the economics are, is whether it's going to be more open pit or underground, but the last drilling will will definitely increase one or the other, early underground or further open pit. So, but like I said, I didn't want to spend the next 5 years drilling off Mt Carbine because it's probably $20 million, and I'm not sure if you would ever get to the end of the resource. So where do you cut it off is the question. But I like, maybe it's being a metallurgist, but I like piloting. I like getting into production quick and early, get the bugs worked out of it at a low cost before you expand, and then we expand the open pit. And then everything is ready to go. The bugs are worked out of it, and then you're not wasting money in high grade ore, putting it through a plant that's not recovering it. So that's why I did it, and we're going to keep expanding, and we'll probably keep updating the economics and as we go. We currently also have increased from the feasibility study. We did the economics at $315 an MTU or $31,000 a ton, let's say. It's now gone up to $350 an MTU. So we've had a significant increase in the price as well since we did our feasibility.
Well, for those of you listening, what I like about this is the fact that Kevin's not going out saying, well, we're going to keep exploring, we're going to keep expanding, he wants to get into production, and that way he's going to get some cash flow, less dilutory for shareholders in the long term. Final question for you, my friend. The indicated resource at 0.74% WO3, that's pretty high grade. How rich is Mt Carbine, and how would you reference it to other tungsten projects? in Australia, around the world?
There is certainly King Island scheelite also has a very nice grade in their open pit. It's comparable, if not a little bit higher in that regard. Obviously, economics and location and all those things come into play, but they also have a very nice grade. And Australia has some pretty good tungsten resources. It obviously depends on scale that you're mining, but globally, like 0.22 in an open pit would be very reasonable grade. So we're dealing with a really, really high grade deposit here that we've identified, and it comes from our geological team identifying these high grade zones within the deposit, where previously I thought that all the quartz veins contain tungsten, which they don't. So they've identified specific veins that are carrying it and modeled it in that regard, and with oriented drill core, and they've done a huge amount of work.
Well, Kevin, you have not been sitting back. You've been getting on with the work, and congratulations on the progress. What's the final word goes to you? What can investors expect to hear from you in this, let's just say, the coming few months?
I think certainly the funding announcements, more pictures on the early works, increased production rates coming from the plant, and obviously the financing concluded for both phase 1 and phase 2. So I think it'll be a good year for the shareholders. Yeah, hang on.
Watch this space, hang on for the ride. ASX code EQR. Kevin MacNeill, thanks so much for joining us at the NWR conference today.
Thanks, Kerry.